I will share this screen. Yeah, I will share my screen, and I'd like to welcome all of you. Welcome to the Requirements Engineering Principle for Test Engineers workshop. My name is Polina Karabach. I'm a function analyst and application engineer at Materialize. Let me introduce myself a little. I am doing the tasks and I'm functioning in this role for more than 5 years, and I'm specialized on medical software projects and 3D printing area. I have experience in various projects from the small, cozy, isolated teams to big projects that last for many, many years. From projects that were started from scratch to projects that had some legacy to them, or an integration complex one with a different different companies. Also, I'm acting as a trainer for business analysis fundamental course at CodeSpace. And from my achievements, I can mention that I'm a IREP organization certified professional for requirements engineering. I have a Materialize Gold Star Award, is an internal recognition system at Materialize that I achieved for achievements in specifically analysis in the year of 2018. And also I'm a distinguished Toastmasters. For those of you who may know the Toastmasters organization, you may have heard about it. It's an organization focused on developing the public speaking and leadership skills. With that said, let me move on to the Miro board that we will be using today and describe a little bit agenda and our rules, our best practices of this webinar. Before I will continue with that, I will already send the link to this Miro board in chat because I know it may take some time to log into it. So I will send it in the chat now. You will be asked to register if you don't have an account in Miro yet. It's a very nice tool for different activities, including to everyone. Please let me know if you can access the link in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and tell me. That should be normally possible. Okay, I can see people joining. If you have any issues with joining the board, please write in the chat or let me know. Unmute yourself. Okay, I see cursors coming. The fastest, the early birds. All right, in the meantime, I will a little bit describe our agenda for today. So today is the part 1 of the workshops on requirements engineering for test engineers. And today we'll be covering the topics of skills required for working with software requirements, the core activities that are needed to process any requirement, and also the requirements types, the way to categorize them. And at the end, we'll have a part of system and context boundaries defining. This is the guideline for the parts we will have. Please be expecting some interactivity. It's not just me talking for where I can find the link to Miro. It's in the chat, but in case you have joined a little bit later, I will add it again to the chat. Let me know if you don't see it still. All right, so I was telling that this is the outline of the parts we will have. So at first we'll introduce one another. Then we'll have then we'll cover topics first 2 about activities and skills needed for requirements engineering. We'll have a short break for about 10 minutes in between, in the middle of our webinar. Then we'll cover the theory and the practice for types of requirements, system and context boundaries. And we'll end this session at about 9 p.m. GMT +3, so it's a Kiev time. Some of the ground rules of our workshop today. Please, if your internet allows you, if you feel comfortable with, I will be very happy to see your faces, because it's usually improves the learning process, the way how you would interact with the group. That is a very good thing. So if you're able to switch on the camera, I would be pleased if you do so. Then if you're not talking, please keep your mic on mute, so that we don't have any disturbances and it's comfortable for everyone. If you have some questions, please put them in the chat and be active in the sense that we'll have plenty of exercises today where you can put your ideas, where you can learn by your active participation. I guess you can increase the level of usefulness of this webinar for you. So please ask questions and your comments if you have any. Be on time. So most of you were very successful in this. Thank you so much for being on time. We also have some parking lots for questions. If there will be a little bit too far away from the topic we're discussing, we'll be putting them here, and if we have time, we will address them later, or perhaps they will be related to the next workshops that we'll have this week. So as I mentioned, this is a part 1 out of 3 of these workshops. And the next one, the second part, will be tomorrow, and the third part is on Thursday. There we will cover in more detail the topics of requirements documentation, elicitation techniques, management of requirements, etc. So please register, and I will be glad to see you in our next days as well. Some references that were the basis of the theory in this workshop, and just good sources of information for requirements engineering. Could someone please share Miro board again? Yes, sure. I have the link in my clipboard still, so here you go. I see 9 people at least, or yeah, 11 people in this board, so hopefully we have the majority. Let me see, we have much more participants. Yeah, it's 19. So if you still don't have an access, please make sure to follow the link in the chat, because next part, our next exercise is about you. It would be very nice to get acquainted. So in the section that we have here, you can see the following structure. So you can find any of such sections in the Miro and type your name, your current position, years of experience, your current location, from where are you from, and some interesting facts about yourself. Also, it would be nice to understand your expectations of this training and how do you want to apply the knowledge. And we'll have about 5 minutes for filling in, and then we will have a review of this, maybe a bit more brief because we are a big group today. So you can already start doing it. For those who haven't joined the Miro yet, please do. And I will make sure that everybody has enough sections to fill in. You can add me to the Miro. Yes, thank you. I will check the notifications. Just refresh it here. I may need to add some I don't get notifications for some reason. I will check my mail as well. Okay, now there should be enough of cards for everyone. I don't seem to have notifications from people who requested to join Miro. Let me see. What I need to do, I sign in, but can't make something. Tatiana, do you have you signed in into the Miro? Or do you see this board? Yes. Do you see this board? No. Did you follow the link that is in this chat? Or you can unmute yourself. You can. Yes. I see the blank board only as well. Okay. I think, Denise, for you, I know what's the okay, Tanya is also here. Oh, please don't move this. I will look it. If you just scroll down, you can unzoom to the maximum and see like a bird's eye view on the board. And you need to move your cursor a bit to the left to see the structures so you can fill in your information. So scroll. Yeah, perfect, perfect. Denise, did it work for you as well? You need to, or you can just drag and move the board. You need to go more to the left. You need to make it 3 or 2%, not 100. If you're on 100, then indeed you would see it very closely, and you need to go vice versa to 1%. Oh, something happened here. Well, let me lock the groups for you. Okay, and the 5 minutes have passed in the meantime. I guess if somebody is already, oh, be careful, I will block it for you. Yes. Okay, I'm good now. Thank you. All right. Did anybody already finish with filling in the information? I can see in the first group we have Kiran, Alisan. Are you ready to?
Yep.
Can we already repeat? Yes.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay. Did I get your name right? Paulina or?
My name is Paulina. Yes,
Paulina.
it's correct pronunciation.
Yeah. Yeah, Paulina.
All
So
right.
my name is Kiran and working as a test manager right now. And I'm currently in UK. And my goal from this training is like basically to understand more in terms of what can I ask when I participate in the requirement meetings, one. And two would be like when I talk back to my team, how can I explain them in a better way to think of the different scenarios that they can by looking at the requirements. So I think it would. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you. Glad you are here with us. Thank you. Who's next? Oksana, have you finished QA Berlin? Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I finished already. I think I can add more about my expectation. It will be like general knowledge about how it can improve in our team, analyze it better, and as well help our product team to write them better.
Yep, very nice goal. Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's move on. Daria, business analyst from Kiev.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Daria. I'm a business analyst and I have not much experience, just 1 year. That's why I try to use each possible source to find out something new regarding requirements, the gathering, and so on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Daria. Nice to meet you. Natalia, functional analyst from Kiev.
Hi, sorry, I can turn on my camera. Something strange with my Zoom. I don't even have this possibility. I have only possibility.
Okay. Sorry, then yeah, could be this case, right?
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Natalia. I live in Kiev. Functional analyst. Interesting fact about myself. It's that I'm a doctor. I'm a pediatrician, but now I'm not working this specialty, and here I'm to hear something new or maybe structure existing knowledge about requirements engineering.
All right, thank you, Natalia. Welcome. Denise, senior QA from Tallinn.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Dennis. I'm from Tallinn, Estonia. I'm working as a senior QA engineer, mostly doing the test automation stuff. This webinar looked quite interesting to me because I don't know much about how would you create requirements out of whatever. I'm actually quite unsure what is this course about, so I felt curious to really understand what is it and maybe gain some benefits in my current work.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. Welcome. Thank you. Let's move on. Roman, QA from Lviv. You want to share a little bit about yourself? Friendly, funny.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. My name's Roman. I'm QA June with over 1.5 years of experience. I'm located in Western Ukraine, Lviv. Friendly, really like to travel and all what's connected with it. And what about goals? I really would appreciate to get new knowledge and to listen to new point of view and a new for me experience. So just to be able to use your knowledge for my own good. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. Welcome, Olesya. Do you want to continue? Senior software test engineer. It's 5 years of experience. Olesya, are you with us? I don't seem to see Olesya in the list. I don't have an option to turn on my camera, so I don't have a button to unmute yourself. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's strange. Huh. Maybe we can look into that during the break if we can fix that. Okay, I will just voice it myself. Thank you for noting it down. So senior
Hi.
top.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Perfect.
Cool. Thank you for providing me such option. Hi everyone, my name is Alessia and I'm from Kyiv, from Ukraine, and I'm working as a senior software test engineer, and I'm working as a manual tester around 5 years. An interesting fact about myself, I like sport, basically yoga and dancing, modern dancing styles, and I'm here to get to improve my knowledge in requirement analysis. I'm already using some of the techniques for reviewing the requirements, but I'd like to maybe get something new about new techniques, if any, which I can use in my work.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Welcome. And next is, I don't know if I will pronounce it correctly, Shiva Krishna. Oh, I really am afraid to fail at pronouncing it. Can you please unmute yourself and present a little bit?
Yeah, Paulina. Hi, good evening and good evening to all. Yeah, my name is Shiva Krishna Chapiala, and I'm working as a consultant with an experience of 6.5 years. I am based out in Hyderabad, India. And interesting fact I could only say is about like on the technical side of it. I am an API enthusiast and I'm passionate about API, so I'm rigorously doing my kind of study on that area. And the goal to come to this workshop would be very straight, to learn the areas of requirement analysis and improve those areas of enhancement towards software testing and use in my further kind of roles.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. All right, and it seems we have no other cards written. If somebody still is experiencing issues with entering the Miro, but we would still like to hear about you, you can just write in this structure information about yourself in the chat. I would love to see it during the break. Okay, let's move on. So welcome everybody. It's very nice to see you all, to understand a bit more that we have here QAs and business analysts as well, with different level of experience and slightly different expectations. So today, as I was mentioning in the agenda, we will be starting from some basics to get the same understanding on requirements engineering. And let me first share with you some of the theory, right? The terminology that is just a basic, it's like air that you need to breathe with if you're a requirements engineer. And yes, I've already shared some next activities we'll do. Let me just mention these three important terms that are used across the work of business analysts, so that we're on the same page. For the most experienced people, it will be more clear, but let's align. So a requirement, what is a requirement? The classical definition says that it's a need perceived by a stakeholder. It's a capability or property that a system shall have. And also at the same time, its requirement is a documented representation of this need, capability, or property. So it's some description of what we need to have in a system, or what it should be concurrent to, to correspond to, as well as its documents. Stakeholder is a person or organization that has a direct or indirect influence to the system's requirements. Indirect influence is when the person or organization is impacted by the system, but never proactively influenced on that. So for instance, a user is also a stakeholder, but an indirect one. Then development team. it's also a stakeholder, although we are working on a system, but the inputs that, for instance, developers or just engineers that provide for the system, what certain limitations it should follow, entail, and etc. The classic stakeholder that we think about when we're mentioning this word is, of course, our business stakeholders, people responsible for the scope, for the budget, people who request certain functionalities, and our users. And the next term that we'll mention and move on is requirements engineering. What is requirements engineering? It's an approach to gather, specify, and manage the requirements. It has several goals to gather the needs and the needed capabilities that a system should have, to also get the consensus between the stakeholders about these requirements, what exactly and how exactly we are going to implement or add certain functionality to the system. It's also a process of understanding the stakeholders' desires and needs, and it's about specifying, documenting, and maintaining these requirements. And let us return to the mirror board and ask one question before we go to the theory. Which activities for requirements engineering do you know? What in more details does requirements engineering or business analysis, if we say, will entail? It can be just a brainstorming. You can put your ideas in these stickers just by selecting them, double click, and you can type anything that comes to your mind. There's no judgment. We will also not see who wrote what, so feel free. It's just a couple of minutes, maybe not 5, but around 3 minutes to fill in. We'll review this and then we'll continue with the activities of requirements engineering. If you have any questions or something is not clear, please let me know in chat or by unmuting yourself.
Collaboration with client.
This is Jack speaking, right? Or
this is Ankit Parikh. Yeah, Ankit Parikh. Yeah.
Ankit Parikh. Yeah, and you don't have an access to Mira, or?
I'm getting acquainted with. 1 minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be nice if we could write it down all together without yet discussing, and then we can review it all at once.
Right, let me try.
Yep, thank you. Okay, maybe 1 more minute to finish your thoughts. I see some people are still typing, brainstorming. Okay, you can finish the card you started, but let us go through this and review what we have. So activities for requirements engineering based on what we've seen. Analysis, yeah, definitely. Analysis would be needed. Observation, it's one of the elicitation techniques, yes. Interview as well, elicitation and elicitation as well. Refinement grooming, yes, a part of adding more details and clarifying some unknowns together with the team. Absolutely. Documenting requirements, yes. Business meetings, yeah. Requirements engineering would entail quite a bit of meetings and collaboration with business stakeholders. Vision for the product, yes, it depends whether, yeah, which exactly specialist and the roles and the responsibilities this requirement engineering entails. If we talk about high level business analysis, that can include that one as well. User experience will be included in the requirements engineering for sure. Competitor analysis, absolutely. While we're reviewing and performing analysis stage, that is a good thing to do. Surveys, one of the methods is elicitations. User personas, better understanding of our users during elicitation. Perfect, great ideas. Review and test. Review, I would say, yeah, if we're talking about review of requirements, cross-review between different analysts, then yes. Test, it could be like somewhat user acceptance testing, like testing of the system, but testing itself in a classical way as quality engineers do, quality assurance, probably that is not anymore a requirements engineering. Create new requirements, yes. Benefits or usage. Benefits or usage. If it's about, for instance, gathering the benefits of usage of the products, like the benefit hypothesis defining, then totally as well. Analysis of requirements, yes. Design sprints. Design sprints. If somebody can comment a bit more what was meant in this card, just so that I interpret it correctly.
It is about one of techniques, when team is collecting all the thoughts about some features or something like that during the week.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, indeed. If we're talking about process, so
yes, process
stage of organizing a specific timeline when we are focusing on requirements engineering. Yes, great addition. User interviews, it's an elicitation technique. Analysis competitors, yes, we've seen it before also. Market analysis, research, yes, collection of different analytics. Indeed, use it as a test oracle. Use as a test oracle. Can somebody comment a bit? What did you mean here?
Yeah, and use as a test oracle means like use as a source of truth when we need to find the expected behavior. So
a ground source of how the system should behave, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Get approval from products. Yes. Also, customer interactions, Google Analytics review, brainstorming, requirement backlog. Requirement backlog in the sense that during a requirements engineering, we can add some items and clarify the details indeed. Whiteboarding, asking questions of specialists in the sphere, elicitation indeed, understanding the client's requirements, mind maps, competitor product review. Wow, very nice list. I think you already know quite a lot about different techniques and different processes, rituals that entails. Let us dive a bit deeper in this next 10 to 20 minutes. We will go into requirements engineering theory. So let us also talk a little bit about the role of business analyst. This workshop is focused on requirements engineering in general. So it's important to mention that although in the projects there often can be business analysts or people with other job titles that would work with requirements, it is important to mention that business analyst or requirements engineer is a role, not necessarily a specific job title. So if you are in a role of just engineer, but you elicit some requirements or you document them or you perform any other parts of requirements engineering or completely, it means that you are in that scenarios, you're acting in a role of requirements engineer or business analyst. So it's important to understand which of the activities entail and apply to the role of business analyst to do it. And it's not always also in the project that we have a business analyst. So somebody would still serve a role of it, even if there is no business analyst. So it doesn't mean that the requirements engineering is not happening in those projects. So business analysts, as we've seen, would classically analyze, synthesize, and structure the information provided by different stakeholders, from customers, from the development team, from the management, etc. And one of the key goals of requirements engineering, regardless if it's done by a business analyst or by a person who is doing activities of requirements engineering, is to dive into the real why, is to ask questions. Why is this like this? Why does our stakeholder, our customer, or our user ask for it? Not to take the desires or voiced solutions to us, but to dive deeper into the actual needs, user needs or business needs. And that is one of the key messages, key points important to remember and to set as a reminder to do. There is plenty of synonyms for business analysts or roles that are somewhat overlapping. So some of the people in the role of business analyst, for instance, are more into the business context and high-level requirements, some of them more to the system analysis and low-level requirements. Also, during the requirements engineering, during working with the requirements, a lot of communication is usually expected. So a person who does the activities for requirements engineering serves as a somewhat bridge with communication between different groups of people. And further, we will see which kind of skills are required and are essential to successfully serve these requirements engineering activities. So sometimes a person that works with requirements feel like this person in this picture, like it has so many hands, so many things to take into account and not to forget. So the core activities, and I guess that you've covered and you mentioned the techniques and the approaches for all of these core activities are requirements elicitation, applying all of those brainstorming, observation, interviewing, surveying techniques. And we will talk about the elicitation in more detail in our next workshop that will be tomorrow. It's a documentation. Documenting the requirements with all of the quality criteria taken into account to make it non-ambiguous, to make it clear, to make it reusable and understandable structure. Everything is essential and absolutely needed for just a normal process in the team, for normal distribution of these requirements and synchronization between all of the involved people with the stakeholders. Validation and negotiation. And I guess you are well aware with this stage because a person who works with the requirements would usually review them together with the relevant stakeholders. And it's not only with business analysts, with the business stakeholders, with the customers, but also with the development team. So test engineers, it's essential and absolutely necessary to review the requirements documents or requirements in whatever format they are, but review them with the team and make sure they are feasible, they are acceptable, and there are no contradictions from the technical perspective. And the last but not least activity of requirements engineering is management, is assigning different attributes to the requirements and creating structured traceability, so dependencies within the requirements and with other documents. For instance, a link to the test plans. How does that which requirements was the input for which test plans, and for instance, which business needs caused creation of which set of the requirements. Also prioritization techniques, all of these activities connected with making sure the requirements are in a good shape and we can gather the relevant information from that entails the part of management. And we'll cover the documentation and all of these three core activities in our third workshop on Thursday. So let me ask you, and if anybody can voice it, would be nice. What skills are needed for successful requirement engineering? Can you just unmute yourself and just name a few, or you can type it in the chat.
Communication skills.
Communication skills, yes. Something else?
Negotiation.
Can you repeat again? The sound is not very good.
Yeah, I'm saying like negotiating.
Negotiation, skills of negotiation. Yeah, okay.
Some technical background, preferably.
Yeah. Some IT understanding of some software development processes.
Yeah, at least on a basic level.
And maybe domain knowledge or the specific technical aspects of the project. Yeah, okay. One more.
Ability to understand many parts of the system, like to see how to say whole process, not just separate parts, but also how the systems part of the system are integrated.
Mm-hmm. So like a system thinking, we can call it, yeah, like holistic view. Yeah, very nice, very nice. And I also see, thank you for sharing.
Yep.
And I also see analytical skills. And one more.
And maybe ability to formulate the gained knowledge. So just after business analytic understand it all, he or she must formulate it and give the info for the engineers. So this would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. And Shiva Krishna, please.
Polina, I believe that we should, as in requirement engineering, I believe the person should have the ability to read the mind of the client in the sense of understanding more detailedly the requirements and delivering that in a right way. So I believe they should have a right mindset and have the ability to read the actual requirements in a right way.
The right mindset. Did I hear it correctly? The sound
Right
is not
mindset, and they have the ability to read the need of the client, to foresee the need of the client. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 To have the right capabilities to convey the needs of the client. All right. That's
asking right question.
Yeah.
Asking questions. Yep. Okay. Thank you for lots of inputs. Let's review some of the capabilities, skills to foresee problems, identifying the risk management. Yeah, also a nice way. We can maybe put it under the umbrella of analytics thinking, analytical skills. Also, I suppose. So here we have a more high level key capabilities of business analyst or by basically any requirements and engineering person who's working with requirements. So indeed was mentioned, and this is the first maybe obvious part, but analytical thinking is needed for the analyst, for the person who's working and doing the analysis for requirements. And indeed entails being able to identify the real need, to identify the problem we're trying to solve, to ask the right questions, to dive and to gather lots of information, to being able to structure it and make it clear and understandable for other people. It's an empathy. It's more of a soft skill, but it's also very essential for a person who's working with requirements. Why? It's because of the amount of communication that's a person who would elicit requirements, who would negotiate them, who would get work towards reaching a consensus in requirements understanding. And that entails talking with different people that have different context, background, etc. So it's very important for a person who's working with the requirements, doing the tasks for requirements engineering, to really understand not only what the person is saying, but why, to understand the emotions of the person, to be able to stand in other person's shoes. So it's really about the emotional and intellect. It's an important part for this job. Communication skills was mentioned, and absolutely true. And that would entail being able to be structured in communication, to get the right level of details that you're using, depending on who you are talking to. Is it a business stakeholder that talks in budgets, vision, numbers, and really high level helicopter view point of view, or you're talking with the developer who or with reviewing the requirements together with the team, and you really need to dive into the details and understanding how our system works, which then you can use all of those terminology that the team is used to. It's all about communication skills. Conflict resolution skills also was mentioned, very good point. And it's about the stages where there's certain different understanding of the requirements. So managing, resolving the conflicts in requirements is also one of the duties and tasks of person who works with them, and being able to understand and gather different points of view and somehow lead to the common solution, common decision, hopefully, ideally consensus, but knowing other ways to get to the decision, also essential. Next, moderation skills. Moderation skills is about being able to organize the process, organize, for instance, the communication between different stakeholders, organizing the meetings and leading them, and being structured and making them as efficient as possible. Self-confidence. Why do you think the self-confidence is needed, is one of the capabilities?
because you can feel pressure, even some people want, like to their interest be prevalent, and you have to be confident to fight for your point of view.
Yeah, that is correct. Thank you for your comments. Indeed, when we have certain conflicts in the requirements, or you present your proposal to the stakeholders and they start to criticize it, say that no, it will not work that way, it takes some self-confidence to not completely throw your solution away, but really to provide the rational arguments of why you think that is a good idea. And then it's not also about closing your ears and not listening to anybody else. Take into account the feedback, but don't consider that everybody knows better around you. That's also needed. First, make everyone believe that it's possible to do. Well, to some extent, it's a matter of collaboration with the team, I believe. Persuasiveness, the last but not least, it's a little bit connected with self-confidence. It's about being able to convey your message, your proposal, to show in a structured way with the pros and cons. So very rationally, but also confidently. And few other things that were also mentioned. And it's like an additional capabilities, more generic, that would be needed not only to the person working with requirements engineering, but for the requirements engineer, they are as essential. It's management skills. So when you are working with your own requirements and you're organizing the process, that would be needed. Knowledge of certain IT areas, especially connected to the project. So perhaps it could be some level of understanding of the development of the language for development that is used on the project, SQL, JSON format, Python, etc. These things are really specific per project, and for requirements engineer, it is important to learn them these details as he or she goes, to be more efficient and to create those requirements more correctly. Software development, understanding the process, the different models and methodologies, their roles and rituals, either it's waterfall or agile, understanding the methodologies of agile, for example, very widespread, Scrum, Kanban, etc. And domain knowledge. So depending on the project, it's always a good idea to dive into the domain to understand our stakeholders better in the first place. Because if it's for example, like in my case, a medical project, you need to open that atlas sometime and just to read through it to understand the terminology, and also ideally understand what does our users talk about and what do they think about. All right, let's return to our board, and our timeline shows that it's time for a break. So you have 10 minutes to make yourself some warm cup of tea or coffee. Also, don't forget to stretch a little bit. It helps with learning process because it brings more, improves your blood circulation and brings oxygen to your brain to consume the next part of our training, of our workshop. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat. For the rest, see you in 10 minutes. Already in 9 minutes. So we start at 05. All right, in 1 minute we'll continue. We can go back to your screens. Okay, let's continue. Now in this next section, we'll be talking about types of requirements. Also, we'll cover the definition of the system context, and defining the boundaries between them. At first, we'll go again some theory block, and then we'll have an exercise that everybody can participate in Miro. Let's review what types of categorization of requirements there is. Yeah. And this is a classification based on the IRAP standard, International Requirements Engineering Board organization. So they distribute the 3 main categories for the requirements. It's a functional requirement, it's a quality requirement, and it's a constraint. And we'll look at them right now one by one. What is a functional requirement? Functional requirement is something that we usually think about when we think about requirements. So it's some function that a system should possess. It's some behavior that a system should have. It's certain user interface, all of the UI elements, buttons, drop-downs, etc. So it's also a description of functionality that covers the quality requirements, and that's important. We'll see a little bit later why. So yeah, an example, it's any kind of tool or function you can think of any tool. For instance, we're now in a Zoom application. So for instance, mute, stop video, participants are all some functions of the Zoom call. Next one is a quality requirements. And quality requirements, sometimes referred or classified as non-functional requirements, is something that is more often hidden or obscure, or sometimes unfortunately missed during the requirements engineering. So that's why it's very important to understand these 3 types of requirements that exist and to proactively elicit and document each of them, to include them as in a part of your process. The quality requirements, it's explanation of certain quality of the system that it should possess to perform in an optimal way. So it's everything about performance, memory intake, its availability, dependability, scalability, and a lot of other abilities, usability as well, that a system should have in order for those functional requirements to work as in an acceptable way. Because we can implement certain functionality, but if it will take too long for certain action to happen, it will be a non-acceptable work of the system. And that's why it's important to take into account those and not to forget about them. So here are some of the abilities that are present for the quality requirements. This is not complete list. It can be continued even further. And it's just a vivid picture of how many different aspects there are that can be and should be analyzed for the project. Now, you may ask right now whether a requirements engineer or a person who works with requirements need to analyze all of this to sign off and say that the requirement is now analyzed and is ready for implementation. The answer is probably not, because of course that would be not very efficient in terms of time. So what to do then? One of the options would be to look through, for instance, such a list or some other lists of the quality requirements and select the most relevant ones for your project and customize your own checklist for the quality requirements to identify those that matter the most, and then make sure you check them every time you work with a requirement. Some of the things may be not applicable if it's a requirement that is a static UI, static message, or not a message, something that is not taking any time to be shown, then for instance, performance requirement would be not applicable, but usability, how that message is formulated, how well it is visible or available for the users or clear to understand, that would be a usability requirement for your system. Now, I mentioned that a functional requirement is also a description of the functionality that covers the quality requirement. What does it mean? It means, for example, if we introduce some, if we should concur to some quality requirements, for example, for the security, or for the safety, we may need to implement certain functionality to ensure our system is secure. For instance, the registration, authentication, all of the functionality that restricts certain users, certain people from accessing certain information. That would be a full-blown functionality with a lot of functional requirements, but that all refers to the originally quality requirements of, for example, security. If you have any questions or something needs to be clarified, please write in the chat. And the last but not least requirements, type of requirement is a constraint. So what is the constraint? It's certain requirements that limits our solution and to beyond which we will not be able to go. So it's kind of a box for us, usually that comes from the outside. So constraints that will impact the requirements engineering, for instance, it can be people, domain factors, organization constraints, or it's some conventions already used in the project, in the company. So it's also certain requirement to the system to which it should correspond to, and usually that we cannot really, it's not really flexible. In contrary to the functionality we really created based on the needs, here it's something that would be brought to us and would define in which ranges we can or cannot work. Let's go back to Miro and practice what we just heard for the requirements categorization. To make it more clear, perhaps there will be some questions when we look at the exercise. So now you can see another block, requirements categorization, over here. And everybody gets to have such a block where you can see 3 columns: functional requirements, quality requirements, and constraints. And lots of stickers with different requirements on them. So you have about 7 minutes, or if people are finished faster, we will review it faster. You can just drag and drop these cards to the column that you think this requirement belongs to: functional requirements, quality requirements, or a constraint. You can type your name here to secure that it's your board. Maybe I've locked some of the names. I will fix it now.
Polina, may I ask you a question?
Sure, yes, go ahead.
And the constraints, it is about security? I was a bit not available for a moment.
So let me remind. So security as a quality requirement. So it's certain abilities, capabilities of the system that basically, correspond to its quality, but it's not something, not a new, for instance, functionality, not a tool that we use, but it's certain quality standards, certain criteria that the system should correspond to. So here is the list. You can see it on the screen. And the constraint is a requirement that comes, that restricts the limits in which we can implement our solution space.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, okay. So in about 6 minutes now, I think we will review your results. So 21, easy to remember. Okay, the 5 minutes past, we're doing 6. And I see most of the cursors are already static. So I suppose that means we can review the items. Let's start with this blank. Shiva Krishna, I see that. Were you able to move the cards? All right. I suggest that we start reviewing so that we are on track with our time. And let's go one by one with these cards and just see how did you categorize them. All right, the first one, using of Jira TFS for development process. Who thinks it's where? Okay, constraints. I can see it's in functional requirements, constraints. And then do we have anybody who put it in quality requirements? Yes, we have some options. All right, let's discuss. So using Jira and TFS or TFS for development process is usually, it's not a new functionality for our system, right? It's not something we will implement in a system. It's a tool that we will use. It's also not a quality that our system should concur to. It's a constraint. Why? Because, for instance, in a project or in a company, the tool for working with for development process was already purchased and already used, and our team was not really able to select it. So that's why it's a constraint. Yeah, we have two chats here. All right, next one. 1 second for loading the data. Let's see, quality. 1 second for loading quality. Yeah, I think most of you got it correctly. 1 second, it's a requirement for performance. So it's a classical quality requirement. I would like to also say that 1 second for loading data would be an incomplete requirement, and we should specify the size of this data, the system requirements of the system, that's where it should, like the hardware requirements on which system. And for instance, if it's some web or application that require an internet connection, which speed of internet, etc. But for the ease of use in this example, we just use it 1 second for loading the data. Yeah, quality requirement is a correct answer here. EU regulatory rules compliance. Who put it to, I didn't go, quality, constraints. What options are the options we have? We have constraint, we have quality. So I see the thoughts have split to whether it's a quality or it's a constraint, because it's an external thing, and it may entail a number of functional and quality requirements for us. We would put it to constraints. It's such a high level thing here, and it can bring us some, for instance, quality requirements extra for security, safety, etc. And it may bring us some other functionalities for based on these rules. So some external constraints limiting for us. Next one, memory intake of the application.
And which card it was? Which card it was?
It was EU regulatory rules compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Next one, memory intake of the application should be maximum 1 gigabyte. Memory intake, I see in quality. So memory intake, majority, if not all, decided it's a quality requirement, and that is correct because it would be the capacity, the quality requirement for how much memory does the system should take while it's performing its functions, some of the functions. Let's go next. Consistency in results calculation. Consistency, let's see. We have, where is consistency here? Okay, functional. Then we have quality. Did we have constraints, consistency, somebody maybe? Functional and quality. Okay. Okay, so I see that the thoughts split to functional and quality requirements, where we were. Here we are. So consistency in results calculation. I do understand why you may have thought it's a functional requirement. It's like the accuracy, how like a functionality, it should be, yeah, it's a bit difficult. So I will uncover the cards. It's a quality requirement. So it's how well the results should be calculated. So certain calculation, it's a function. So some algorithm, some tool that calculates some data, but how consistent it's from calculation from one to another, that would be normally a quality requirement. Breakout room in Zoom. Let's see a couple of them. Breakout rooms, functional. Yes, it's a functional. It's a true function of Zoom. And let's see some others, like a group call. It's also a function. Chat in Zoom, it's also a function. Voting in a chat, it's also a function. Registration on a website, it's also a function. To make it a bit faster. Yeah, let's go over next ones. Anonymization. That one is a little bit like has a an extra dimension to it, but let's see. Anonymization function, quality, function. All right. So yeah, anonymization. If we're talking about the certain tool in the system that we've implemented, that would normally that would be a functionality, right? If we're talking about tool that helps us anonymize the data. At the same time, so let's move it to functional. At the same time, we might have thought about a quality requirement of confidentiality, which brought us to the need of having the tool for anonymization, for anonymizing the data. So we see that a quality requirement that we have in our system brings us to the need of additional functional requirements. So you were those people who put it to quality requirements to some extent, yeah. If your direction of thought was that it's about some how secure or how confidential the software is, then it's also the right direction of thoughts. Compatibility with Windows and iOS. Let's see. So constraints. Then functional. And quality. So we have all of the options. Well, if we're talking about the classic definition, so abilities, yeah, it's a hint. So being compatible with certain systems would be quality requirements. although it is true that some standards of integration with Windows can be treated also as constraints in a sense that there are already formats of data and certain protocols that you should follow. But in classical sense of way, compatibility is a quality requirement. Using C++ for the application, for implementation of the application in that sense. Using C++ constraints. Yeah, it's a constraint, so let's move faster. So it's something that, for instance, your application exists for many years now, and its main language of programming is C++, so it's your constraint. You won't probably change it now. New styling. Let's see. Okay, quality, functional, quality. Yeah, also a little bit of a tricky part. So styling connects with the usability, with the ease of use. But at the same time, implementing, adding the specific elements, updating the colors or the texts, or the sizes or the locations, that would be certain functional requirements, very specific things that we need to do. I suggest that we do the following. We use it still added in functional requirements in the sense that it's a set of functionalities we need to update. And then there's a usability of the application. Usability of the application that entails the need for these functionalities that brings us to creating these new functional requirements. Corporate code conventions. Let's see. Quality. Constraints. Yeah, it's a rather of a constraint because it's a convention. Yeah, it's certain external rules that we should follow, that our team for implementation of our system cannot choose. Development team in 3 offices, same, it's a constraint. So it's a limitation that we have. Developers in 2 team. If we don't have unlimited budget, then it would also be something we don't choose. Data privacy rules, speed of switching between the breakout room. Since we've already mentioned about speed, 1 second, speed of switching to the breakout room would also be a quality requirement, and data privacy rules. Let's see how people split it. Somebody put it to quality, somebody put it to constraints. If we're talking about certain existing rules that comes from external, I would suggest that we still categorize it to constraints because it's something we should follow. All right, we finished with the tasks. Maybe you have any questions about that before we move on? All right, if you recall something, please let me know in the chat. Also, perhaps somebody, no, there are no questions in the log. All right, let's move on. The next theoretical part that we have is about system context, system context of a system. So the aspects of the context in which the system exists. What are they? It's the people. It's the stakeholders or group of stakeholders that do correspond, that are in the context of the system, because our stakeholders impact the system. Systems in operations, so any other integrations or the hardware, software that our system should work based on, everything is in the context of the system. Processes, certain business processes, technical or physical, any kind of environments that has their own processes, it's also a part of the context for the system. Events, technical or physical, and documents, certain standards, system, documentation, and etc. If we very schematically describe and show the system and its context, we can see something like that. So there is a system, just one, our black box. As a whole, that is surrounded by certain system context, and around all of that is the whole universe that is irrelevant. And one of the tasks of the person who works with the requirements is to define what is a part of the system context. So something that is relevant for our system, that has impact and should be taken into account during the requirements engineering, and what does not impact us, and we can completely ignore it and don't spend our time on eliciting those needs. So if we go in a bit more details, we can see it like that. So there is a system, there is a hardware and software with which the system is integrated. There are business processes, there is some documents, laws that impact our system. Few other concepts of the system and system context. It often happens, and that's absolutely normal, that we cannot define very clearly what is a part of the system context and what is not. What is a part of the system and what is part of its context. And these unclear parts are called the gray zones. The gray zones are these aspects that we will, during our requirements analysis and engineering, will further clarify and assign it to either system, its context, or the irrelevant environment. As I already mentioned, the criteria of defining the aspect to system context or to the irrelevant environment would be the question, does this aspect impact the system or not? So that would be the answer. Ways to document the system in its context. As you may imagine, this is a very high-level explanation of the system. So it's when we are really talking about the system as just one non-dividable block. And things to document this can be a data flow or a use case diagram. So we would show use cases, for instance, in this block, a whole system with use cases inside and the context outside that is connected to specific use cases. And with the data flow, on this level of detail, it's called the context diagram. This is an example from the Carl Vickers cafeteria ordering system, where you can see in the center the cafeteria ordering system, like one circle. And then there is a bunch of different aspects of the system context, and the arrows show what kind of information and in which direction is exchanged between the system and its context. And we see that in this case, it's certain meal deliverer. So it's a person then in this case, like one of the users, cafeteria staff, patron, menu manager, payroll system, so other system, cafeteria inventory system, and the types of data. This is a theory. Let's practice. The last exercise for today is over here. And I suggest us, for the sake of time, let's do it together and brainstorm some ideas for the system whole group. And we will work with the taxi service app. So perhaps you can recall, oh no, please don't move it. 1 second, I will lock this frame. Yes. Oops. Okay. Sometimes Miro is tired. It looks. Okay, I grab the frame, but the tool is actually amazing, so I cannot complain. All right, so what this task entails. So you can recall, or you can even open on your mobile phone or anywhere in a desktop, any taxi service app. So when you order a taxi and it's the driver is here, let's think about what aspects would be a part of the system, what is in the system context, and what is a part of the irrelevant environment for this kind of application. You can unmute yourself and comment. So let's work on it together. Any ideas? You can also use these blocks if you want to test some ideas first yourself. Can you still unmute yourself, or maybe there is some issue? Let's start with the system.
Could you comment one more time a bit? System and system context here, maybe.
Some examples, yeah? Yeah,
please.
Sure. Let me start. So the system, taxi service app, I can add any kind of functionality. So the basic functionality is order taxi. Order a taxi. So that's it's a functionality of the system. Then the system context would be, for example, a driver who is the user of the system, one of the users, and yeah, they may be connected. Maybe it's not a direct, but for instance, a driver of the taxi or registered driver, to be more precise. Yeah, and we can move on. So the goal is to understand what will impact the system and what not. Is it a bit more clear now?
Maybe pay for ability to pay for a trip using the credit card.
Okay, so ability to pay for the trip, that would be a part of the system, or it's outside in context?
Maybe context.
Maybe context.
And why?
Because it's not the main functionality, it's something that works for that main functionality.
Yeah. Ability to pay will be checked later, so system will work until some point, even without ability to pay.
And what if I say that everything that a system can do should be inside of it? Like, for example, ability to pay, or yeah, I will double check. Do you mean ability to pay with
like available funds?
Available funds, like we are linking some credit cards in the application?
Or cash.
So from what I hear, it sounds like we need a functionality that would allow us to select an option, the preferable option of payments, and also a way to link a card there or pay sometimes in cash, right?
Like then we will have like so a main financial system as a system part.
Well, that's a good point, and therefore I wanted to. The next question is then, should be the exact payment system a part of our system, or we will integrate with certain other system that will provide us this functionality of secure payment, etc. Let's imagine it's separate two things. So we can do what we can do. So we can add payment options in the app. So it's all of those logic UI functions that a user can select in the app and then some bank or payment system, like when you are, for instance, ordering something on a website, to pay for it, you would be redirected to the other website to actually fulfill the payment. So we would assume payment system is not a part of ours, but it directly affects it, and we should integrate with it. So then it will be a part of our system context. Would you agree with such distribution?
Yes.
So it will be quite similar to, for example, the car GPS tracking. For example, we'll be using something externally, but still our system requires some sort of the UI or whatever in order to be able to track the orders.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why one of the reasons why do we need to create such a high level diagrams. It's again, just like we mentioned with quality requirements, with constraints, it's a way to elicit the missed external parties or aspects of our context that we should take into account. And some things like, I will say here, I will also add data protection regulation. If our system, when we are implementing it, will not implement functionality to make sure the data is not shared to any people that shouldn't have access to the data, we might not be able to work in certain country that expects these regulations to work. So data protection regulation, for instance, if it's ordered a taxi app, there will be a name of the user, there will be a credit card information, maybe a date of birth. So everything of that should be handled in accordance to certain regulations. So it would be data and secure. Yeah, so it's indeed everything that somehow influence our system. Other things is
registered user.
Yep, exactly. I was trying to formulate it also. Registered user, he would be just, for instance, using the system. Let's think about irrelevant context, something that's not impacting. For instance, the driving rules, the rules of driving in a country.
Traffic rules.
Probably not, because we would expect a registered driver to have a driving license, and then we rely on him following the rules. So that would be a part of irrelevant context. We will not take it into account. For example, let's think about some questionable part. Traffic jams. Should it be taken into account or not? There is
maybe will be like a colleague told earlier, at first like a GPS, then system of calculating of price of the travel, and then traffic jams like a sub system.
So we would take into account the traffic jams. Where, yeah, maybe here talking a bit more.
It depends from what type of taxi you will use. Some of them calculating it, some not.
Yeah, but here we're talking about some abstract taxi service app that we're going to develop, so we can choose. So we want to be user-friendly and nice to our users, both drivers and the users, so we can predict the better the time of the ride. So let's say it's irrelevant, but you see, it's not fully clear whether we should take into account or not. So by talking to our stakeholders, with our customers, with our users, and gathering more insights, we can then say, okay, that's applicable for us. or data protection regulation. Maybe we will see that there is no sensible data that we get, so it may become outside of our relevant context. So there can be also, if it's a mobile app, it would be software, so it would be compatibility with iOS, Android, for example. That would entail certain rules for the app to work, and etc. Maybe any other thoughts, ideas that you may?
Where shall we put this part? How the route is calculated? I mean, the price of the entire trip. Okay, I think you already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the route creation, and I was rather thinking about the calculation of final pay. So I think it's rather the system.
Price.
Price.
Calculation.
Price calculation. Yeah.
Based on route. Yeah, perfect. Also, an important part. Maybe some feedback system, some wow features, and etc. So in our next workshop tomorrow, we will be talking about elicitation methods and also the categorization of the features according to Kano model, where we will talk about the different types of features based on the level of how much user expects them or not, how much satisfaction it may bring to them. All right, let's move on. So I hope this became a bit more clear after this exercise. Maybe you have any questions, then you can write them in the chat or unmute yourself. And as a conclusion of our workshop, as a last part, I'd like to take some time for you to write down your key takeaways from the webinar. So you can use any of these blocks right here. Just to edit them. No, if I look it will not. So you can use any of these blocks, write your name, and just take a moment to reflect on what we discussed today. What was something new that you learned, or something that was interesting for you? So we will have for this about 4 minutes, or as soon as you stop writing. I can see that there are only, not everybody is on the Miro board right now, but you can, in the meantime, also think about it for yourself. Even if you don't put it on the board, just to reflect a little bit. Right, 1 minute to go. Okay, I see that people stopped writing. So thank you very much. I can see that different topics were interesting. The systems categorization, interactive workshop with Miro. Yeah, it's also another thing that's feel free to maybe get inspired by some of the things if you liked how the information is organized here. It's absolutely great if you reuse it for some of your workshops for your tasks during your work. It's a great tool for the team collaboration. Really start to think about context of requirements and how to define how good some info can illustrate it. If it's a compliment, thank you. Very good start. Hope to hear more detailed info tomorrow. Yeah, perfect. Looking forward to see all of you tomorrow as well. And the last thing is your feedback. I see that you already partially gave some feedback here, which I'm very pleased to hear. This one is more statistical and not anonymous feedback. So in this graph, there's a 2-axis webinar delivery, how well it was organized, your mark from 1 to 10, where 10 is very good, 1 is could be there's lots to improve, and webinar contents, how you find the content was useful for you. You can grab any sticker and just put it on the intersection where you see your feedback would be. You can leave the cards, and in the meantime, I just want to thank you for your participation, for your comments, for your time that you put into learning, because this webinar is a joint result, and the effectiveness of the information that would be transferred from this Miro board, from this presentation to your own practice later on, it depends on both, on the trainer, but also on the trainees that participate. So I thank you so much, and I remind you that we will have 2 more workshops this week, 1 tomorrow at the same time as today, and 1 on Thursday. If you have any feedback or comments, you can unmute yourself and also say something if you feel the need.
Thank you a lot. It was really interesting. I like
Thank you.
a lot.
Little tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you very much, and have a very nice evening, relaxing and pleasant. And
Thanks for the session. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks.